Good afternoon. I am Matthew Tubasine. We are living in Novueval times, and that's something I would specifically like to address in this video. Uh, excuse me. To start with, MIT did one of the first, if not the first, computer model uh, based on what humanity would have to deal with over the next few decades using a number of variables. They had 5 different things. There was food production, pollution, population growth, productivity. I can't remember. There were 5 categories, anyways, and they used different numbers for 3 different models. One model being what they called BAU, business as usual. That is, if we just kept chugging along, doing everything the way we were doing it back then in the 1970s, what would it look like? And what it looked like was societal collapse around 2040. God, this is a noisy city. I think Miami exemplifies societal collapse more than anywhere else I've been in this country. This place is just so noisy, so rude. There's a whole list of things, but I don't want to talk about Miami. I don't even want to live here, much less talk about it. Anyways, so, given that we had that January 6th insurrection, which was way out of line for how this country behaves politically, normally. I mean, let me tell you this. The first time I got to vote was when Reagan was running, the first time. And after his first term, when his first term was coming to a close and everybody was getting ready to vote again, there were all these people that were saying, if he doesn't get elected, he's going to declare martial law. He's going to demand that he remain president. Blah blah blah, and that got me concerned. But it didn't happen. It didn't happen in his second term, which, he obviously was not going to get reelected because we have term limits on presidents. But I started ignoring it after that, because for every single president, they say the same thing when it's coming towards election time. Oh, if he doesn't get elected, he's going to declare martial law and demand to stay in office. And it hasn't happened. Well, let's see. There was Reagan, there was Bush, there was the other Bush twice, there was Clinton twice, there was Obama twice. Who am I missing? Anyways, none of those guys tried to pull that stunt. It was all just a bunch of BS. And then Trump comes along and he tries to pull the stunt with fake electors, with an insurrection, with trying to get it overturned state by state in courts all across the country. And it's just accepted by his party. Yeah, this is normal. This is the way you're supposed to behave when you lose an election. No, you're not. No, you're not. Not at all. Nobody before Trump has ever behaved like that. But this video isn't about politics. It's not about Trump. This is the day after he got shot in the ear, which was unfortunate because he's going to go out and he's going to try to collect money on that and be successful. He's pretty good at scamming his base. But I just wanted to say, given where we're at and where we're going, I think the single best thing you can do for yourself is prep. Learn to prep. And I know a lot of people think preppers are just like uh, hysterical, just weirdos. You know, the way we're typically um, presented in like Hollywood movies. You know, we're crazy nuts who are always waiting for the zombie invasion. That's not true. Actually, down here in Florida, every year we are more or less taught how to prep yet again by the government because we have Florida. We have hurricanes. We have hurricanes, and I think it was Hurricane Charlie. I've seen video of it, but the people down in the Keys, they were without power for weeks. And, you know, if you hadn't skedaddled, um, if you were more or less stuck down there because you've got like knee-deep water everywhere, you couldn't even drive out at that point. If you hadn't already driven out, if you hadn't already driven out and you didn't have a boat, you were pretty much stuck there. But in any event, I was running a shop back in 2020, the beginning of 2020. I started to prep for hurricane season, and I had everything lined up. I had a refrigerator, I had a generator with a solar panel, I had a one burner for the little Coleman propane bottles, and I had a two burner that I never used. I never needed it, but I had a two burner. I think it was a Coleman stove, but that hooked up to you know, the little 1 ounce or the little 1 ounce propane bottles, but 1 pound, 1 pound, yeah, whatever they were. In any event, COVID came along. They started showing videos of people getting in fist fights in the Walmart aisles over stuff like toilet paper and hand sanitizer and masks and God knows what. But anyways, I looked around my shop and I thought, you know what? If I had to, I could stay here for 2 months without leaving. And that wasn't because I was preparing for the zombie invasion. That was because I was preparing for a hurricane. And if for some reason I got stuck in that shop and couldn't get out, because it was actually a low spot, when it rained hard enough, water would actually come in. I had everything off the floor so nothing would get wet. But when water came in, when it rained, water would actually come in under the garage door, and we'd get maybe a half inch at the very worst, and that was like some real downpours. But I just like to say, learn to prep, because even if it's not a madhouse after this next election, and I'm getting to that also, even if it's not a madhouse, you know, hurricanes, COVID, tornadoes, forest fires, I'm trying to think of floods. There is, I don't know where it was, if it was even in this country or somewhere else, but I was watching a video and they are having 500-year floods like every 5 years now. So it's just getting crazy. We're having more and more extreme weather all the time. But I do believe after this election, regardless of who wins, it's going to get really stupid. And, you know, we just saw Trump get shot. I mean, thank God it didn't do any real damage. But, you know, that kind of thing, that hasn't happened since Reagan, I think. Yeah, you know, none of the other guys, nobody even tried to shoot any of the other guys. I guess, I can't remember, during Clinton and during Obama, both of them, somebody came along and took pot shots at the White House, but you know, that's really not the same thing as shooting at an actual person. But now that we've established that, what I'd like to say to the Democrats is stop being stupid. Buy a gun, go to the range, learn to shoot. Seriously. Seriously. I've got no problems with you trying to establish reasonable gun laws. But first of all, for those of you who are extreme enough that you want to take away other people's guns, forget it. That is never going to work. And even if you did succeed, that means only the criminals have guns. And that's still a lot of guns because there's a lot of criminals and there's more guns than there are criminals. But anyways, I do believe there is going to be pockets of violence countrywide regardless of who wins. And if you're a Democrat, and especially if you're an outspoken Democrat, you ought to learn how to shoot. You ought to have a gun, and you ought to know how to use it. Okay, that's really all I have. I know that sounds a little crazy to some of you. Oh, learn to prep, buy a gun. But hey, you know, survival is tough. We've had it easy for decades. That's starting to change. The more you learn about how to survive without technology, without community, the better off you'll be. The more tech and community you have, providing you can keep those things close to the vest, the better off you'll be. But you never know when there's going to be a complete breakdown and you're on your own. You ought to, at least if you're in good health. And, okay, I'll go over that quickly. There is more or less a list of priorities when it comes to prepping, and it starts with health, mental and physical. It doesn't matter how much stuff you have on your shelves if you're sick and dying. There's a saying, when you're sick, the only thing you want is health. When you're healthy, the only thing you want is everything else. So want everything else. Don't want health, be healthy. But beyond that, in terms of the material stuff, air, water, food. You can't go 3 minutes without air. You can't go 3 days without water. You can't go 3 weeks without food. Keep that in mind, 333. Concerning air, I myself don't worry about that. If I had the money and I had the space, I would definitely have a mask. I'm camping out and I just don't have the money, so I'm not carrying a mask around in my pack, that's for sure. But, you know, if everything else is taken care of, I would worry about water first. Either you have a source or you figured out how to purify water. And there's all kinds of videos on that. I'm not going to get into it, but learn how to do that. Beyond the fact that we might not have a SHTF situation, we're either giving or selling all of our natural water to companies that are just going to charge us to drink water from now on. So, you know, it's getting crazy. We're not even gonna own our natural sources of water. They're gonna be off limits. And I know that sounds extreme, but that's where we're going. It might take a few years, but that's where we're going. In terms of food, start just stockpiling canned goods. What do you like to eat? Find as much of that stuff on sale as possible and buy it. Check the date before you buy it, but realize this. When it comes to expiration dates, that is something that the food manufacturers took upon themselves to do. The federal government does not require it. And I'm thinking when it comes to that, it's largely guesswork. I don't think they put in a whole bunch of R&D trying to figure out how long their food would last. They just made an educated guess and stamped the can. So, you know, if you got a can that's a month, 2 months, depending on what it is, even years over the expiration date, it could possibly still be good. The biggest thing about food is smell it. If it smells bad, don't eat it. No matter how hungry you are. If it smells bad, stay away. If it doesn't smell bad, try a bite. just a small bite. See what happens. If you're really leery of it, try a small bite and wait a couple hours, or try a small bite, put the rest in whatever kind of container, whatever way you could save it safely, if you can. Take a small bite and wait a day. See if you get sick. I mean, hopefully we won't have to what's the word I'm looking for? Hopefully we won't have to rely on any of this stuff I'm saying. You know, hopefully life will just continue to be more or less the way it's always been, even though it's changed drastically in the last 5 or 6 years. But there you go. You know, be prepared. Just be prepared. We've already seen the COVID thing. We know what the WEF is trying to pull on us. I mean, there's all kinds of, well, we know what the Heritage Foundation is trying to pull on us, and there might be a civil war. You've heard MAGA time and again saying there's going to be a civil war. I don't think there's going to be a civil war. Well, there's definitely not going to be a civil war like the first one, you know, where you've got huge geographical areas, big armies, uniformed, supplied, fighting in lines. It's going to be pockets of violence, and it's going to be like one of those Middle Eastern countries. You're going to have different factions coming together, falling apart, coming together with other factions. I mean, it's not going to be the Republicans and the Democrats. It's going to be people from all over the spectrum, and other people who want to keep the peace and know how to use a gun, and communities trying to protect themselves. It's going to be very messy. If it is, and I doubt it will be, but if it is, it's going to be very messy. And it's probably only going to be pockets, but still, they're probably going to spring up overnight, create a bunch of havoc. The National Guard is going to have to go there, clean up the mess, and then the next day somewhere else you're going to see the same damn thing. That's my take on it. We'll see what happens. Hopefully nothing. And another thing, just one last thing. If you do decide to prep, God, be careful watching videos or getting on Facebook pages or anything like that. You've got so many extremists that are sure everything's going to fall apart. I think everything is going to fall apart, but I don't know. There's no possible way I can know, and I'm hoping it doesn't. But you got some people out there that are hoping it does. And like on Facebook, every time somebody asks a question about anything, somebody says, well, I got enough lead and brass, I can just take what I want. And you got a bunch of real nutcases. Well, it's like anything else. I mean, look at the Republican Party. Look at the Democrat Party. You got nutcases in both of those. There are extremists, and look at Christianity. Look at the people. It doesn't matter what the organization is. If there are enough people, you're going to have nutcases. And when it comes to the preppers, you got a lot of relatively balanced people, and then you've got these extremists who are sure everything's going to fall apart tomorrow, every day, and especially the videos where they're trying to sell stuff. I'll give you a good example. Canadian prepper. I must have seen him do a thumbnail with World War III in it at least 50 times over the last year. Seriously, World War III, World War III. He's always screaming that everything's about to fall apart. NATO this, Russia that. It's just crazy. But he's got a whole line of stuff he's trying to sell. And there's, even when it comes to stuff like magazines and cars and deodorant, the biggest thing advertising uses to try to convince you to buy stuff is fear. And you can imagine when it comes to the preppers, that's pretty easy to tap into. So pay attention to that. When I say prep, I'm not saying get hysterical, the sky is falling. I'm saying it's like this. If you think it's going to rain, you're going to go out with an umbrella. It's not crazy. You're just prepared in case it rains. You're not freaking out about it. It's just a thing. Sometimes it rains, take an umbrella. This is much the same thing. Every civilization eventually falls apart. That's a given. There is entropy and there are cycles, and there's no getting away from that. There's nothing special about us. Sooner or later, we're going to fall apart. It's nothing to freak out about. Nobody knows when. Just keep it in mind. And if you're prepared, the more you know about everything, if you know about wild edible foods, and if you have a stock, and if you know how to trap, and if you have some land where you can live off grid, you know, if you have everything set up so if everything did go south, you'd be in a pretty good place. There's nothing to worry about. I mean, you know, it's like cancer or death. I'm not saying death is inevitable. Cancer's a possibility. But, you know, you don't freak out about those things. I know I'm going to die someday. Oh, well, it is what it is. I might get cancer. Well, we'll see what happens. I'm not going to freak out about it. I don't have it now. And it's the same thing with any kind of a disaster scenario. I mean, you don't freak out about a tornado when it's a perfectly calm day. You freak out about a tornado when there's a tornado watch. All right, well, I'm going to call that it. Just remember, we are living in interesting times. So, thank you for watching. If you didn't watch, well, what's wrong with you, man? Talk to you soon.